Welcome to the Audit Commission of March 28th, special meeting. This is a hybrid meeting with Finance and Audit Commission members, city staff, and members of the public participating in the downtown conference room and participating remotely. So I'll start with roll call. I'd like to introduce staff and Finance and Audit Commission members present. Lynn Bramlett, Matt Normington, and Jeff LaRoe, and myself, Carol Wong. Staff present include Administrative Services Director Brittany Mello, Assistant Administrative Director Jared Hansen, Interim Finance and Budget Manager Ronnie Singh, Senior Accountant Ying Chen, and Management Analyst Adrian Patino. Adrian, would you please provide instructions to the Finance and Audit Commission and members of the public on how the meeting will proceed?
Certainly. Thank you, Chair Wong and the members of the Finance and Audit Commission. Welcome everyone to the March 28th special meeting of the Finance and Audit Commission, and thank you for attending. Staff will engage in webcams and microphones to make presentations and respond to members of the Finance and Audit Commission. For members of the public who are in attendance and wish to provide public comment on an item on tonight's agenda, after the chair calls for public comment on the item you wish to speak on, for virtual participants, please press the engage the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen. If you are calling in from a landline or from a cell phone, please press *9. And if you are in person, please complete a speaker card and return it to me. That concludes the instructions, and I return the meeting to the chair.
Thank you, Adrian. So moving on to regular business. Under regular business, the Finance and Audit Commission considers recommendations from city staff on policy matters or administrative actions that require Finance and Audit Commission approval. Our regular business item today is to review audit reports for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2023, and the auditor's report on the calculations of the appropriations limits for fiscal 2023 to 24 and recommend receipt by City Council. To introduce the item, could I have Management Analyst Adrian Patino do that?
All right. So we have a sure. All right, thank you, Chair. We have a brief presentation to kind of go over the key takeaways from the included staff report. We'll just wait for her to sit down.
Oh.
You're locked out.
No, hello.
Yeah, I miss you guys. We can also. Here.
Which one? Oh, all right.
My third.
You want it closer. Right. So thank you, everybody, for attending. We were just about to get started with our regular business item for this evening, and staff has a brief presentation to kind of summarize the included staff report, reviewing the audit reports for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2023. So a bit of background. The audit of the financial statements has already been completed, and we presented that to this committee and to the City Council along with the annual comprehensive financial report. So what this is a different audit which is focused on the spending of federal awards So typically, a non-federal agency that expends more than $750,000 of federal awards is required to have a single audit, which tests the schedule of federal awards or SEPA schedule. In the prior fiscal year, Menlo Park had federal expenditures of $4.1 million, of which $3.7 million of this was in ARPA funds, and the remaining expenditures were below $750,000, which is that threshold for a single audit. Because of this, the city was.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Could you go back?
Yeah.
It's trying to parse 4.1 of the 3.7. And then are you saying the rest of the 400,000 was below 750,000, or there are other expenditures that were?
Correct. So the remaining federal awards expenditures were under $750,000.
It was about 400K. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Certainly. So again, because of this, the city was eligible to complete an alternative compliance examination in lieu of a single audit. And this is a process which is more streamlined and is available to recipients of ARPA dollars who would otherwise not have been required to perform a single audit. And then the other kind of audit communication, which is included in the staff report, is a review of the appropriations limit. So the appropriations limit is required to be calculated annually, and this is performed by city staff and brought forward to the city council every year during the budget adoption. And this calculation is then reviewed by the auditors as part of the financial audit every year. So that's also included as part of this staff report. So moving on to the results of the audit, the city's auditor, the Poon Group, rendered an unmodified clean opinion on the examination of the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds, which is what the ARPA dollars fall under, saying that the city complied in all material respects with the specified requirements related to these funds. They also issued a report on internal controls, finding no deficiencies, instances of non-compliance, or other matters identified. And lastly, on the two appropriation limits for the fiscal years ended June 30th, 2023 and June 30th, 2024, the auditor noted no exceptions. So that concludes our presentation, and I return it to the chair.
Thank you, Adrian. So any clarifying questions from the Finance and Audit Commission before taking this to public comments?
Could you explain what an appropriations limit is and how that's used by the city?
Yeah, so essentially the California state constitution has a restriction on the amount of revenues that are basically allowed to be like appropriated for each fiscal year. And there's like a calculation which adjusts that number every year. So the city's budget cannot expend more than whatever that calculation is for that fiscal year.
Oh, good.
What does ARPA stand for?
Those are the American Rescue Plan Act funds. So those are the some of the stimulus spending that was passed at the federal level for coronavirus relief for state and local governments.
Is the appropriations limit linked to the GAN Act? I can't, okay,
Yeah, it's also known as the.
okay.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It's the GAN limit. It's commonly known as GAN limit. That's after the bill sponsor, Mr. Paul Gann, that sponsored that back in 75 or something like that.
Yeah.
A long time ago.
And so this, if I'm looking at the spreadsheet, the appropriations limit for 22 to 23 fiscal year is 75.5 million. That means the city's budget cannot exceed 75.5 million in that fiscal year.
And that's only for certain, there's certain requirements of what's eligible to be on the GAN limit. So this is like the tax revenues that come in, but not any of the special revenues, like any of the grant revenues. Those aren't included as special revenues that are subject to that limit. The GAN limit actually has specific items that says these are specifically excluded from the calculation. So we may have revenues that look more than the limit, which we don't, but that calculation figures out what that number is. And that's what the auditors are recalculating and certifying here.
So like taxes that the residents would pay, payroll tax or property taxes,
Property
sales
taxes,
taxes.
sales tax, TOT. Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
So I have a clarifying question. So, this is an expenditure limit. Is it all expenditures or is it certain expenditures?
Yeah, again, that's certain expenditures that are subject to the GAN limit as well. Like the grant revenues and expenses are not subject to the GAN limit because those come in separately and have separate requirements. This is again for mostly those specific things like your property taxes, your sales tax, your TOT tax, those type of general type revenues.
Oh, I think my question was about expenditures. So does this limit expenditures on education or is it all types of city expenditures?
It would be all types of city expenditures, except for those that are specifically related to a specific revenue source. That's why I mentioned the grant revenues. Like those can only be spent on grant expenses. So those grant expenses would not be subject to the limit, but all the other expenses have to meet under that limit.
Gotcha. So it's almost matching some of the revenues to expenses. Okay,
Correct.
gotcha.
Mhm.
Any other clarifying questions? Okay, Adrian, do we have any public comment?
If you would like to comment on agenda item C1, review audit reports for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2023, and the auditor's report on the calculations of the appropriations limit for fiscal year 2023-24 and recommend receipt by city council. If you are logged in virtually, please engage the raised hand feature at the bottom of your screen. If you are dialing in from a cell phone or from a landline, please press *9. If you are in person, please complete a speaker card and return it to me. And I'm not seeing any requests for public comment at this time. You may continue.
Great, thanks, Adrian. So I'll now open it up for Finance and Audit Commission discussion. Lynn, I know you had a couple of questions, so fire away.
Okay. Well, I thought the report was straightforward. But I'm curious about how so I realized, our role here, but to me, I was curious about how the city spent the ARPA funds. What were the programs and or services and what did each receive? And I asked if there's an existing report that you can point me to that details this information. And if not, are there plans to develop such a report? So.
Yeah, so for the fiscal year ending 2023, the council had approved for ARPA funds to be spent for public safety salaries. So that's where you'll see most of the expenditures happening for that fiscal year. So these expenses are directed by council. We don't have a detailed report since those expenses went out to the public safety salaries, and I don't think we're required to provide a detailed report as part of the reporting that we did for the single audit.
Yeah, the only other piece I can refer you to is if you go to the ACPR, there is actually an ARPA funded projects fund in the financial statements, and you can see what those expenses were in the fiscal year. So you need to look at the either the budgetary comparison schedules or the summary of the non-major governmental funds that has that specific ARPA fund in it.
Okay. So I have a few more, but I'll wait and let everyone else ask a question, and I have a few more. Okay, so as I understand it, then maybe I was confused on the numbers. There's some remaining ARPA money. Is that correct or no?
All of the funds will be expended and are required to be expended by the end of the year.
But they have not yet been expended.
They're being drawn down on a quarterly
see.
basis to
Okay.
pay for police salaries as those expenses are incurred.
Okay, and then the report mentions new accounting standards and noted that the audit followed existing ones. So for all of them, I believe except one, it didn't give a date when they needed to be adopted, and I wasn't sure if they had to be adopted. But if you could, I guess I asked what plan, if any, does the city have to adopt the new standards?
Yeah, so we evaluate each of the standard as they come up and are relative to being due. The ones that are coming up that we know of, there's the debt conduit obligations, the public-private partnerships, the subscription-based IT arrangements, which we implemented this year. And there's a new one that's coming up, I think it's number 102, which is compensated absences. So all of those are evaluated on an annual basis as we go through the accounting process to prepare the financial statements and get ready for the audit.
So there is no required, one of them had it like a date when it already started, actually kind of a requirement. The rest is discretion. Is that correct?
No, that's not. Each of them have a specific date that they're required to be implemented by, and it's for periods beginning on or after that particular date. So it depends on the particular standard that you're looking at, whether or not that's going to be applicable to that fiscal year and starts that year or not.
I'm curious about the public-private partnerships in particular. Do you have an estimate when that might be required?
That was already implemented for fiscal 23, and it did not have any significant effect on the city's financial statements.
Okay. And it's not, I don't ask thinking I'm going to find some, I'm curious. I hope you all realize that. Okay, one final question, page C-123, management representations, and maybe it was how I read the sentence, but I'm curious as to what representations from management were included in the management representation letter. So what did management want to add to that letter? I was just curious.
So this is a letter that's actually required by the auditors, and we certify to the auditors that we don't know of any fraud, that we don't know of any misstatements, that we've disclosed to them all the information that they have requested. We've let them know of anything that comes up as far as if there's any estimates or anything that pops up. And then also if there's anything that happens subsequent to June 30th that might affect the financial statements and how that would apply to the financial statements. We also disclose to them any known deficiencies that we're aware of in internal controls, and that we've given them, again, all the information that they need in order to perform their audit, and we've not withheld any information for them.
Okay, thank you. So I don't have any further questions. I did appreciate, I thought this report was quite clear to read, and I really appreciated that, because I know that's not easy to do.
Thank you, Adrian.
Again, congratulations on a clean report.
It's a huge accomplishment to staff, so kudos to everybody that worked on this really hard. I get to show up at the very end and go, yep, we did a great job, so.
Any other questions or comments for discussion? All right, this is moving along quickly. I guess the next part is to state the motion and put this to a vote. And Adrian, please state the motion.
All right, motion to recommend receipt of the audit reports for fiscal year ended June 30th, 2023, and the auditor's report on the calculations of the appropriations limit for fiscal year 2023 through 24 by City Council.
I'll make the motion. I'll move.
I can second that.
Sounds good. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great, I think that's all. And we're ready to adjourn the meeting. Yes, we have a regular meeting, I think on the 18th, right?
Meetings are special.
Yeah.
April 18th. Okay.
Just make sure I have it down here. 14th. At 5:30.
Right. Bye, Jared.